focus groups. From that, they are going to be adjusting some of the information in the plan. But again, the purpose of this is so that they can get the final copy of this master plan correct, so that we're not looking at it a year from now saying, well, why is this in there? The format of this, I'm going to read through the summary sheet that I've provided you, and then we'll go, rather than line by line, we'll just go page by page through the recommendations. If anybody has any questions, comments towards a recommendation on that page, I will say, so the first one will say we are going through recommendations 1 through 8 under the recreation facilities. Does anyone have any comments? That would be the opportunity to discuss any of those recommendations. That feedback will then be taken by the consultants and put towards the plan. All right. So the draft North Middlesex Recreation and Facilities Master Plan demonstrates the municipality's commitment to enhancing the community's well-being and quality of life over the next 10 years through parks and recreation. The focus of the plan is indoor and outdoor recreation facilities, parks, open space and trails, and service delivery policies, programs, and practices. The master plan is a guiding document to inform municipal processes, including, but not limited to, council budgets, staff reports, grant applications, partnership discussions, and other corporate and departmental initiatives such as economic development, as parks, recreation, and community facilities are highly desirable amenities that boost quality of life and attract new residents and businesses. Monteith Brown took several key documents into consideration while building this plan. The following documents were reviewed: the North Middlesex Community and Corporate Strategic Plan, the North Middlesex Official Plan, the North Middlesex Development Charges Background Study, the North Middlesex Accessibility Plan from 2016 to 2021, the Framework for Recreation in Canada, the Parks for All, the Provincial Policy Statement, the Planning Act, as well as the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Through community consultation as well as focus groups, Monteith Brown built the draft master plan. From this draft master plan came the 67 recommendations outlined below. So we will start on page 1 with section 5, recreation facilities, and we will start with recommendations 1 through 8 if anyone would like to discuss any of those. So that would be the first page there.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Who wants to start? Councillor Irwin.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Before we get into this granular detail,
Okay.
if I may ask a question or two.
Yep.
And first, I'd like to welcome our new CAO to her first council meeting, because this first question might actually pertain to her. So, Your Worship, if I could ask just this question. It says on page 4, we're going to align our plan with strategic documents, as Brandon outlined. But I do remember during the interview process that our new CEO mentioned that you would like to revisit our strategic plan because it's been 5 years since it was implemented, to see if it's still up to date. And I'm wondering if we're going to be considering alignment of this plan with that revisiting of the strategic plan. I don't even know when that's going to occur. So there's my question.
Oh. This one, oh, that one's unplugged. I'm starting off well, aren't I? Okay, well, first and foremost, I thank you for the welcoming remarks. I appreciate that. Certainly, our strategic plan should be revisited, in my opinion, for this term of council, but that's a council-directed item. So certainly at this point, it's not my understanding that that is something within budget, but something we could do maybe at the staff level, just to do a review of it to make sure it's still aligned with this council's values and initiatives that we want to move forward with. And those should be in line with this plan, of course. With a lot of public consultation and involvement, I believe, went into this from council and the public. So my feeling is that the two would go together quite nicely, seeing that this was just done through the public process. And but we would want to try to align the two things together once the two documents were updated.
If I can make a further comment to that, Councillor Irwin, is, and I think Adrian, you'll agree with this, this has had much more public input to it than what our strategic plan did. And so I'm hoping going forward that our strategic plan mirrors this a little better, where we have more public input to our strategic plan. Because I was quite disappointed actually with that process. I think this is a much better process, much more involvement by the community. And so, yeah, that will help to make in line the two as well. So, yeah. All right. You said you had another question you wanted to?
Well, again, it's question I raised with the consultants when they were here presenting this draft previously. And that is trying to get a sense of the definition of recreation in a 21st century setting, which includes leisure, which includes the arts, which includes culture. And there's lots of documentation that takes that position. And I'm wondering and hoping that when the consultants come back to us, we have a recreation definition that looks at these demographic changes and how recreation is evolving as we move forward.
Okay. Brandon, you want to answer to that? Or I can say that if you look at the document, all those things are listed as part of the recreation. The leisure, that is all listed through it. And I forget which page it is now, but that is all listed. But Brandon, go ahead.
And the consultants, I did ask them that question specifically, where they get their definition from. And they follow basically the framework for recreation in Canada. That's a national document that they use.
All right, thank you. All right, so if there's no general questions on these first page, Councillor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I have a question. I guess I'm a little bit confused on item number 6, when it makes reference to divesting, municipality to divest itself of the Carnegie Library. In the document, it was very clear that they're recommending promoting arts and culture, which the Carnegie Library actually does, probably more so than any other entity we have in our municipality. So I'm a little bit confused why they would recommend that we divest ourselves of that particular resource when they're actually also recommending that we improve arts and culture in our community, because it seems to be more so than anywhere else.
So are you saying, no, you don't agree with that recommendation?
No, I don't. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Because I mean, if they're proposing to promote arts and culture, then that's the center to do so, in my opinion, to offers those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose of this here tonight, to make sure that we state those facts, that is not what we see happening in the future. We're fortunate to have those entities in both Elscragen and Park Hill and to lose them. So
On the other hand, I do agree with the West Williams location, and I think we have been exploring those opportunities previously, and I think we should continue to do so, and perhaps even donate that particular structure to the community.
okay, thank you. Other questions on this first page? I would ask you, Brandon, on the first one, just engaging the schools to utilize daytime. What do we have to offer them that they can use?
So currently we allow our schools to use our ice whenever they need to. We don't charge them currently. We are going through a shared use agreement, which will kind of tie up more of the insurance issues. And then hopefully through that, we can get them using the facilities even more.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions on the first page? Councillor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I was just looking at the second page, but it seems to be a carbon copy of the first page. So, yeah, it does. Okay. So the other comment that I have, and I spoke with the CAO just the other day, in regards to the placement of the arena, and because they said it's approaching 75 years of age. And I guess my question to that was, and a number of councillors here would agree with me, there's a number of homes in our municipality that are well over 100 years old and still in excellent shape. So I'm not really clear as to, is 75 years of age a magic number when it has to be placed? I can understand the upgrades, but the structure itself, if it's well maintained, it should continue to be useful for a number of years yet, shouldn't it?
Brandon.
So through the mayor to Councillor Cornelison, yes, I would say that that's accurate. That's why we do our structural analysis. We're having one done this year to basically look at the structural steel to make sure that it's still in good condition. The 70-year mark is definitely a benchmark when you talk about asset management. That's usually the life they give a facility when it's built. 70 years. At that time, usually that's when you start thinking, okay, we're nearing the end of the asset's life. Whether the asset can live past that life, it's certainly a possibility.
But with that, just to follow up on that, Brandon, it also goes in with what is our estimated usage of hockey in the going forward? Because right now it is in a bit of a decline, not just in North Middlesex, like across in Ontario, because of the costs and everything. And so that would be part of that whole assessment, would it not?
That would for sure. I would say that this year hockey numbers are on the increase. Last year they increased, and then this year they're increasing again. They're at membership, I believe minor hockey's at 260, which is high for them. And then I believe the can skate program is at 90 skaters, which for them is very good. This is the first time I've ever had to make ice groups sit down and like talk about who's getting what ice, because they're fighting for ice right now. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
good.
it's a
That
good,
is good to
it's a
hear.
good sign for us.
Yeah. Just a comment here, when you're going to ask questions on certain ones, please give the number just for the clerk to write down on the questions. Other comments, questions on the first page? Seeing nothing. I mean, when we come back, if there's general questions to ask after, we can do that as well. All right.
So when printing, I did print the first page twice and the machine stapled it in a nice little package for me. So we will go to page 3, which are recommendations 9 through 18.
Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a comment that deals with many of these recommendations. We can number it whichever one you want to put it against, and it builds upon your previous comment, Your Worship, and that is understanding shifting demand and demographics. We were talking about ice hockey earlier. Here we're looking at sports fields, pickleball, doubling baseball diamonds in certain locations, et cetera, et cetera. And again, it's an issue we raised previously with the consultant. Are we sure we have the right demographics projection for the next 10 years? I'm a little concerned because they were using lagging indicators for forward projections, and they're all, except for one source, all their indicators came from pre-COVID sources. So I did download a document and I shared it with Brandon and Natalie today, and I'm looking for a source. This is Opportunities for Rural Ontario in the Post-COVID World by Roma. And it begins to look at demographic shifts and how we can expect inward migration and settlement patterns to change the nature of our communities. So I just want us to be really careful as if we looking at short-term, medium-term, long-term around these proposals. Do we have a mechanism that we can review demographics on a regular basis and make sure we got this?
Yeah, and that is the question mark, right? Brandon, do you want to answer?
And certainly in speaking to that, this is again a framework. So, some of the longer term things such as tennis courts, pickleball courts that are recommended for medium term, perhaps when we reach medium term, there's a screaming demand for something else, which takes that place. If perhaps when we get to that, maybe the demand for something else has fallen off. I would have a hard time believing pickleball would fall off, but it's.
But that goes to anything else, right? It's a living document, or for it to be successful, it's got to be a living document, and that we keep adjusting keep ahead of it, or try to keep it.
Correct.
So the one comment I would have to looking at a bunch of these on page 2, like pickleball courts and volleyball courts and that type of thing, is in Park Hill, I think we still have some land possibly down by the arena. In Elsa Craig, I don't think we have any existing land other than changing our Lions Park, which everyone likes as a nature park and a leisure park and trails and stuff. So that's something I think that would be part of this conversation as well, as do we have the property and do we have the right properties? And so I think before we even build it, we have to have that property to sit on. Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Robin. And I think you just touched on the subject that I was going to bring up. That's item number 11, when they talked about increasing the supply of ball diamonds. And yet there is no mention of the Nairn diamond, which is vacant and not being utilized at all right now. And I would think that, given this proximity to Elsa Craig and Nairn itself, that they would have made some recommendation to revitalize that diamond so it can be accessible to the residents of Elk Craig and Nairn as well. You know, to me, it makes sense. And I think there's lots of opportunity in that sports park to do a number of things.
Okay, Brandon.
Yes, so in speaking to that ball diamond specifically, there was only one team who played there for a very long time, and then they have moved to Elsa Craig and they're quite happy with it. Part of the problem with that diamond in particular is when you start to promote use for older kids, and soccer's going on, the soccer field proximity to the baseball field proximity is almost overlapping. So it really causes restrictions in what can be done on that field. You could put in a fence, certainly, but then you're probably taking away some of the soccer space that's currently utilized. So that's part of the challenge there. But I know some of the other recommendations in this plan for East Williams, that park has more options than, say, some of the Elsa Craig parks, because the one is more passive and we'd like to keep it that way. And then the active park is running out of foot.
No, but you mentioned soccer, but that's only 4 hours every Saturday, and that's it.
Currently, yes, they are looking at going back to a travel program next year is what I'm told. I think COVID really, really hurt them. So whether they bounce back in full, that's the hope is that they can. And usually with growth, soccer is one of the more inexpensive programs for a community to have. So I'm hopeful that it does get back to the numbers they were at pre-COVID.
Great thing.
And to your comment, Nairn does have property in behind the pavilion as well on the backside for other activities. So there is some room there as well. So Deputy Mayor Hodgins, you wanted a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Up to Brandon. More of a fill me in question here. With number 11, the ball diamonds. Is there any going down to really young kids T-ball in this town, Elsie Craig, anywhere? Is it even offered?
I would have to check with our minor baseball organization. I believe the youngest they have is U7. And I don't know that U7 is T-ball. I believe that's 5 and below that play T-ball. So to my knowledge, no, but I could be wrong.
And it's just the number one, it's just more utilization that it's offered. We get these diamonds used more.
The nice side of some of the smaller, they play earlier in the evening. So you have your 6 and 7 o'clock games, then you have your 8 o'clock. That's nice. Yeah. Councilor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick note on number 18, and the consultants do address it in the report when they talk about funding challenges. With the onset of Bill 23, ability to hold parkland back in lieu of development will be restricted to some degree. We might have a real challenge here. We might have to, in the past, have land donated. We might have to purchase parkland. I don't know how long or how that bill is finally going to manifest itself. I'm waiting patiently for it. But I think there's some concerns around that.
Agreed. I think without going back specific, but I think there is one development in Park Hill right now, for example, where we have 2 lots in that development. To me, that seems an appropriate place to put green space in. So that's something to look forward to. Brandon, you want to speak?
Yeah, and I will say, I know Elsa Craig specifically, the settlement areas as they grow, even if Bill 23 does kind of affect that, I don't know that there's many people that would want to move into a development that doesn't have parkland. And I think that that's a sell to developers as they come through, that you're making it more of a destination to live with the park there. I don't necessarily think that it will go anywhere. But.
Okay. Other questions on this page? No, seeing none.
I think it doubled every single page.
Okay, they're all doubled. I was going to say that one looked very familiar to page 2. Okay.
So we will go to page 5, which is number 100 in your booklet, and do recommendations 19 to 29.
Okay, questions on this? What's Councilor Canales?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I certainly support and agree with here is the renewal of the skateboard park in Elsa Craig. I think it's been there for a period of time, certainly a lengthy period of time, but also I think it was not placed in the best spot ideally for usage. And I know there's been issues in the past with balls flying out of the diamond and potentially hurting some of the skateboarders back. So I do agree that that's something we have to look.
And I will just say on that note, I know that the capital project for netting was approved this year. I have been meeting with a group who does those nets. I've met with 2 other municipalities who put them up, and one actually had a playground right behind their ball diamond. And their ball diamond fence was shorter than that one, and they put up the fence, and they said since that they've never seen a ball leave that fence.
Oh, okay.
So I think that that will mitigate that issue, and certainly renewal. It is starting to become a tired skate park. So.
Councillor Irwin?
Thank you, worship. Thank you. I didn't raise my hand, but you're doing a wonderful job reading my mind this evening. Thank you.
Well, you looked towards me and I knew where you were going.
I wish I had that power. I want to commend recommendation number 25. I think the addition of the off-leash dog park in Elsa Craig, it's soft land, a soft opening has been really successful. And I think it is an example of shifting demographics and people looking for more passive recreational pursuits. So when we get into the section of parkland and trails, et cetera, I'm looking at the off-leash park as a great example of how people demographics have shifted. We're looking for different kinds of recreational pursuits that we may not have thought of recreation a decade or 2 ago. So, and all 4 having one in Parkville.
And I do believe there's even been some talk at Nairn, has there not? We're talking about whether to put one at Nairn.
Yeah, we have had that feedback as well. And again, behind that pavilion is a nice open
Yeah.
area, that future potential.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Another one to Brandon. Number 19 and 20. Just may I ask you for your definition of a community level playground?
A community level playground is just targeted at everyone. So it's not super challenging by any means. Like there's not a lot of super challenging items. It's more targeted towards barrier free, so that there's features for everyone to use, accessible, just very basic. It's nothing spectacular over the top.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Follow.
which maybe leads to another one, because one of the ones that has been somewhat kind of on the back burner with me, and it's not, I don't want to say that some of the handicapped people over here, number one is the availability for them to maybe go out in a wheelchair and play Frisbee into those things. Is that kind of thing, and or well, if they want to go to the basketball court up at the arena and play wheelchair basketball, not that there's a surplus, but they are out there that maybe are looking to play these sports that can't. Wonder what the thought.
So definitely that is something we're looking towards for all of our parks. One thing that we definitely lack is even a pathway network throughout our parks. Through this, we're doing the dugouts this year. One of the things that I'm looking for is to help make that more accessible for if a coach needs accessibility requirements, those type of things. Just being more aware of it in our parks. Even to get to some areas in the parks, you have to go across grass. I know this weekend we had a baseball tournament there. Somebody was on crutches, and because the grass was wet, found it awful to get around in our park. So just being more focused on those when the playgrounds go in, making sure that there are accessibility features for everyone. The basketball court is accessible. There's a pathway up to there. We don't have nets right now, but.
Okay, Councillor Nerda.
This is for 19, 20, and 21. When was the last time these parks were either replaced or upgraded? I know the one at Coronation Park is relatively new, and they're suggesting to replace it with a community level playground. When are these updated or put in?
So Coronation Park is our oldest playground currently. It was 2004 that was completed. Right now, in the long range capital forecast, I've always put a playground at a 20-year. Every 20 years, it gets redone. Whether that's something this council wants to look at and having a formal policy that says, however, after X number of years, we replace a playground, and this playground, these 2 playgrounds are maybe lower use than somewhere else. So maybe our 4 highlight playgrounds get replaced and then transferred on to one of the other sites and then recycled that way. But yeah, that's so.
And Lurch
Coronation's been Lurie Park is actually newer than Coronation. I believe it was 2008. I'd have to look in our long range capital forecast to be certain, but yeah, so those three are the three oldest, and they were all within about 5 years of each other being put in. So that's why when you get to the 20-year mark. Now, Lurie is certainly an example of a playground which could benefit from a hand-me-down type of equipment. It isn't as highly used.
So we can recycle equipment from say here to bring this equipment to Lurie.
As long as it still meets all the CSA requirements, we do have a playground inspector on staff. So if it still meets the requirements and can be installed easy, then yeah, it shouldn't be an issue to do that.
Thank you, Brandon.
Councillor Canellison, you had your hand up.
I did. My question was, the disc, the golf disc course here in Coronation, is it used at all? Is it used?
So yeah, it's actually has surprising use to it. When I met with the Elsa Craig Lions Club about them wanting to do a disc golf course in Lions Park at some point, and just talking about it as an initial idea. And I said, well, Park Hills really has seen a little bit more usage since COVID. And then I was introduced to an app called U-Score or U-Disc, something like that. And it shows you, and I think there's like 300 and some ratings on our course here.
Oh, wow.
It's a 3.5 out of 5. So
Okay. Great. I didn't
yeah,
know.
it's surprising the use it's got.
That's good. Wow.
Other questions on this? Estelle?
I just looked up on the long range capital forecast. The Lurie Park Pavilion is scheduled to be replaced in 2025. So that would have been a 2005.
Well, that's the pavilion. The playground
You're
and the
right.
pavilion is a deferred thing until we kind of get more clarity on what's going to happen with the future of that park.
Then the
um,
Lurie playground is not in the long range capital.
Okay. And it very well may not be in there because it may be one of those ones that we had planned to, when that one gets replaced, we take that over there and put it in, and there's minimal cost to it. So
Just giving you the
Yep.
information.
thank you.
Okay. On the East Williams Park, making them, these parks have been put in and raised. And there's a ramp going up to them. Does that meet today's codes?
As long as the ramp meets the current slope rating that the AODA specs, which I believe they all do, then yes, it does. And playground mulch, engineered playground mulch, they call it, it does meet all accessibility requirements, so you can do that. It's not quite as barrier free as some of the ground level rubber ones that you see now, where it's right at ground level. It's a
Yeah.
harder surface.
So when you replace, because that's what I thought too. I've seen some, couple of kids that were struggling with, and that was in Elsa Craig that I seen. They were struggling. They were using it, but it was a bit of a tough go. And so when you replace them, would you go down to the ground level with that covering, or what would you?
So that would be an exploratory thing. To go to ground level, it's really expensive for a playground. I just actually got a quote today for Coronation Park, and it's north of 200,000 to go that route. But that's ground level, that's barrier-free features, that's keeping it in basically the same footprint that it is, but making it a fully accessible playground. So there is cost to that. In saying that, I know there's also some service clubs out there that are looking for different things to fundraise towards. So that playground I've mentioned to at least one organization.
So how much is that 200,000? If we raised it up, it would still, it's still a big number for playground.
It would still be a large number. It wouldn't be quite as large because I believe they'd be able to use the same base that's there and then just remulch and freshen up.
Thank you. Other questions on this page? No? Okay.
So I guess now we'll go one page because the printer decided
Yeah.
that.
We didn't double do that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is page 101, I think page 6 of the handout. And we'll look at recreation and park or parkland now. And we'll go from recommendations 30 to 33. So not too many here, but
No, but it gets into a little
Yeah.
different. It gets into the trails and that
it's-
type of.
it's a much
More
different,
leisure.
much different look. So
Questions, comments on this? Counselor Irwin.
Just to start, your worship, through you on 32, decommissioning Ken Vernon Park and West William Community Center. Did we get any feedback from the community on this concept? Negative or positive?
So the consultants got back to me and said that they have had some people in support of this and some people against this. So there are people who support it and there are people who are against it. Now, if it was ever to be divested, how it was divested, Adrian mentioned community similar to what Corbett Hall became or similar to what McGilvery Community Center became. Those would be probably more popular options.
Counselor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yeah, in reply to Councilor Irwin's comment on the community, when this council declared it surplus a number of years ago, I'm thinking 2014 or so thereabouts, I think it was, I can't remember the exact time, but I did get a number of calls from the families in West Williams that utilized that particular resource for bridal showers or family Christmases or family picnics and whatnot. And so at that point, I mentioned that perhaps they should form a group to approach the municipality to acquire that particular structure. Okay, not the parkland itself, but just the structure. Because I think the cost to maintain it and bring it up to total accessibility is prohibitive for the amount that it's used. And I think there's a substantial amount of the soccer fields are never used. And I think the only time the outdoors there are used is actually for Canada, I believe. Other than that, very little.
That is correct. We do have a rugby club who's looking to utilize those lands. So as long as we have them, I think that's a very good use for them.
Yeah, and I understand there's something coming up at tonight's council meeting as well for that particular location.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, we have to look at, we have to maintain some ownership because we have a pumping location there, I think, for the water system there. Well, so we'd have to make some
Right.
adjustments.
Other comments on it? To me, the trail system connecting our community, some are easier than others. And along the road, if you go from Ellis Craig to Narren, if you look at the width of the shoulder, and I have talked with the county engineer on this in the past, there's a lot of it is a very wide shoulder. That's very not, it doesn't have to be paved, I don't think, but whether it's a stone dust or whatever, so it's a safe, a good way to walk. Certainly better than going along the edge of the road with all the truck traffic and all the traffic that's on there. I think that one is attainable. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and if you go part way down, you have that open space, the campground there, for example. Maybe it can be worked out that along the road that is used, but I think that one would be a start to that being attainable. From Park Hill to Ellis Craig, because of the railroad, what happened with the railroad lands and stuff, it'll be tough to do that. But I mean, part way to down to the curbs, it would happen. I think that's really worthwhile. And a lot of people have been talking about this for a long time. And if we could just get together and organized, and I know they're trying to do that. And I hope that happens, because if we even just get one trail in to start it, that builds on it. So, Councilor Keough.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Mayor Rob, or I guess to Brandon as well, it has been in my observation that the expansion or the width expansion of County Road 19 certainly has had an increase in bicycle traffic from what I've noticed. Now, how far they're biking to, I don't know. I've never seen anybody come back, but they're going somewhere. But I do, you might see 8 or 10 throughout the day where you would never see that before.
Yeah, and it is safer for bikes to go down.
Much safer.
Much better for
Yeah,
bikes to go
definitely.
down. Agreed. That was the idea.
Yeah, and I believe that's all outlined in Middlesex County's biking
Yeah.
plan. They've got a official bike plan that kind of shows all the communities and how they plan to connect them. And that's why when they pave roads, I believe even out here now on Elginfield past Narren, or where Narren extends past Elginfield there, I believe that's all got the shoulder for the bike lane specifically as well.
Yeah.
So
And I think that plan is on the website, like the county plan is on the website. Biking. So,
I think it is scheduled to go to Strathroy, is it not?
yeah, and that one, like they're heading towards the lake on a lot of these. You can see that they're heading towards
Okay.
either Ipperwash, Grand Bend, but it is to Strathroy as well.
Okay.
Other comments on this? Councilor Knellison?
Thank you. Just more of a question rather than a comment, Brandon. I know that that a group that's interested in forming a relationship with the Conservation Authority for the Parkville Conservation Area trails there. Is that moving forward or where's that at?
Yes, you should see that at the next August council meeting. You should see a delegation there. They've met with the snowmobile club and another club who are frequenters of that trail and not in the non-summer area. But yeah, they're moving forward. They're getting budgetary numbers, so you know what their goal is in terms of fundraising. And then they'll be looking for council's blessing, I believe, in August.
And I have one more follow-up question, and that's our property that we have in Hungry Hollow. And to my knowledge, it's not being utilized at all. Yet when I go there, I see a number of trails through the property. So did we put those trails in, or did public general public do that on their own, or what's happening?
We definitely did not put the trails in. But I can't speak to the ones there. I haven't seen them, so maybe it's worth a stop on my way home.
Well, it is interesting because they got a little, I know it's like ATVs, but it was nice. It's nice walk.
Other comments, questions on that page? One I would, is to maintain the parkland target of 2.9 hectares per 1,000 residents. I mean, if you do the math on that, we're nowhere close. And going forward, we're nowhere close. That's something that, if we want to look at that we're back to that land, having the property and the land to think forward on this and see what we can.
Yeah, and I believe the 2.9 hectares is what we currently have with no growth.
With no growth.
So as we grow, to try and maintain that is what they're looking for. But
You-
that requires sizable lots from developments in order to keep that. Is that number a little ambitious? Perhaps, but it is just to be in everyone's mind that when we are doing these developments, that parkland is important.
So you're saying we do have around 20 hectares right now of parkland for the residents that we have now? Approximately.
Yeah, when you think about Lions Park, and all the wooded
Okay.
area that encounters that, West Williams is a big parcel, Nairn's a big parcel. I'm
And-
thinking that's where they got their number from. I can circle back to them and figure out. for
And this
sure where it
isn't,
came from.
and then we have to remember, right, this is including our trail networks and that type of, we're talking for all getting to Councilor Irwin's point about the definition of recreation.
Correct.
Any other questions on that page? No? Let's go to the next one.
So we will do recommendations 34 through 41, which will close out the park section, and then we will do number 42 with the next page as their more delivery system.
Questions here? Councilor Keo?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. To adopt this parkland first approach, certainly I think that will have to be well enforced from our prospective developers rather than pay cash in lieu of. I think they're going to have to be, if we would like to follow this model, it's going to have to be a hard and fast rule that we require the accessibility for this parkland rather than accept the cash.
And there, it is outlined briefly here, as well as how many meters actually you should be from the park to the development from parkland, correct?
That is
I
correct.
did see
So
that.
perhaps if there's a small development that's maybe 20 homes and they're only 400 meters from a park, they're within the 800 meters that's outlined. Maybe in that case, we would say, yeah, you know what, for that many homes, it doesn't make sense to have a park. But when you're talking 300 homes coming in, then it becomes a little bit different.
Yeah, but I think it's a great point
Yeah.
made that we want to remember that the existing and the new residents, not just the people that are building it. It's a great point. Other questions on this page? Councilor Irwin?
Just in terms of informing the Recreation Policy Committee in future around use of parkland to ensure it's multi-generational for use, not designated for one demographic. And if we could restrict gasoline-powered vehicles from parkland use, ATVs, et cetera, to make sure that we try to enforce that as much as we can. Because there is a tendency for some individuals to see parkland as a spot to drive their ATV, and then some of them are not designed obviously for that purpose. So I'll pass that on to the current recreation committee. Not just this plan, but which is excellent, but that consideration as well. So,
Okay.
And in speaking to that, currently they are prohibited in our parks. But we do deal with them. We've dealt with a few dirt bike issues in the Park Hill Park. The biggest issue we really face is in the winter months, snowmobiles, but other than that, we haven't had a whole lot of challenges to my knowledge. We had a little bit in Lions Park there 3 or 4 years ago, but yeah.
No, and that becomes an issue in our, if we do enhance trails, that becomes. Counselor Daigle.
it's also an issue though in conservation authority lands. They're
Big issue.
coming in because there's so many entrances through the old rail allowance, dead end roads. That's one of the reasons they're having trouble with their trails. I think as you recall, they said they used to leave trees down, just people could walk around them. But these guys are going in with their ATVs, they've got winches, they can move them and go. And
Yeah.
the problem is they're doing it at night when nobody's around, or at times when nobody's around, and it's more fun when it's muddy.
Well, and they go off the, like you say, they go off the trail to make a new trail, and then it gets really muddy. But that's an issue. Counselor Canellison.
I'm just questioning, item number 38 with the Coronation Park gazebo replaced with new pavilion location to support the use of splash pad. It's not that far from the splash pad, is it? I was by there the other day and it seems to be appropriate.
No, I would definitely agree with that. I think that when they're talking about that gazebo, it's more of a shaded area for the playground. So I'm not sure if they missed the usage on that. There isn't, other than that gazebo, if you had your kids at the playground, there's really no shade there. So I think just shade structure in general
Okay,
for someone to sit at a bench and be shaded while they watch their kids play.
all right.
But I will go back to them with that.
Okay, and I certainly do agree with item 40, the wayfinding signage. I think that is important, and I think it's something we should certainly look at quickly.
Okay. Other questions on that? On this in particular? No? That gazebo was built by a group in Park Hill. And that might be worth contacting them again to see if they have an interest in either, helping to fund to replace it or not. The other option is if it's just for a shade, that sunshade that was put in at Elsa Craig, for example, it can come down in the winter. It's another option. It's just
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would go that route again with that. We have issue with kids climbing up on top of it, stretching it. Yeah, I would prefer going to more of a harder surface that can be up all year round, and it's not as much of an issue having it stretch and not be as good on the install and stuff like that. But yeah.
okay. Other questions on this page? Seeing none?
So we will go to section 7, which is the service delivery system, and we will do 42 through 52 for recommendations.
Anything specific to that page? Councilor Canellison.
Certainly, I will start the ball rolling. Of course, for me, as you can probably imagine, is item number 42. It caught my attention quickly, and I don't know, Brandon, what's your views on item number 42?
Well, the idea of it would be to look after more of just the day-to-day operations so that I'm not directing every single staff and telling each staff member what to do and being accountable for every single staff, that somebody can just, their day is while they're working with the staff, they make sure that everyone's knows what they're doing to evaluate that workflow to take it off my plate. Certainly that is for council's consideration though, so.
So you're talking more of a lead hand position?
Yeah, it would be a lead hand, but it would be more of a supervisory where they do have the right for discipline. They can do the scheduling of staff, those type of assistant tasks.
Okay.
Other questions, Counselor Nerder?
Brandon, this goes to 50 and 51, page 103. It's dealing with childcare. Currently, we have one licensed facility, and it is quite hard to get your child into. And I've had many residents call me and say, "What am I going to do? Do you know any childcare?" And we just don't have it. And I was wondering, what the possibility is if, and then talking to our CAO this week, what the possibility is of us either using an existing facility or building a new facility to either be a municipal owned daycare, or we as municipality own this building and we lease it out to other third parties.
So I can speak to the possibilities in our current facilities. Park Hill is a challenge. The community center there, one of the requirements is for a daycare is to have a dedicated play space that only you can access. The space just isn't there for that without removing perhaps the community garden or something like that. And it's also not recommended to be a shared space, which again, for them to have their playroom, it's significantly undersized. You require so much space for toddlers, so much space for infants, those type of things. Elsa Craig, again, it's a smaller facility, like a smaller footprint in where their play school is. So it's challenging there as well. It operates very well as a play school. They're not quite as stingent, I believe, as like an actual licensed childcare. Now, to build something or acquire land to build something, I think Southwest Middlesex did one not that long ago in Glencoe. They acquired something on the outskirts of town, built the facility, and then went out for tender and I can't remember the name of it, but they found somebody and they're operating a pretty successful daycare for that town. So that model works. There's potential for, maybe nursing home expansions, things like that. Sometimes you see them put in childcare. Sometimes you see when schools do expansions, they'll do a childcare, which makes a lot of sense because the child can go there and grow right into the school. I believe that Thames Valley's had discussions about that. I'm not sure for our specific schools, but as a model that works quite well for them. So those would be more of the directions that I would say childcare would have to go, rather than reuse existing facilities.
So you don't think that we have space to build a new facility on our own?
It would be difficult. We could evaluate whether we have the land required and then go from there.
I only ask because if we want growth, we want people to stay here. If you can't find childcare here and you're taking your child to London, you work in London, what's going to happen is you're going to move to London, or you're going to move to wherever the daycare is. So I think that that's something we have to really look into.
I don't disagree.
Thanks, Brandon.
Counselor Pennells and then Counselor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rob. Just to expand on that is my recollection. So you'd be in the county council, but the director of social services, my understanding that she did establish a daycare in Dorchester, I believe, in one of the schools. And as I recall, she was going to be looking at this community as a follow-up to that particular program. And perhaps you have more information on that?
I don't have much more at this time, but that is certainly the direction we have to work with the county on that. And because they have the resources to go into that farther, rather than just do it at our level, it needs to be both levels to get that done. But yeah, it worked and it seems to be working. That other one works well. So we have had discussions about, we're next, we need it badly too. So it isn't, but we do want to include the county because they have the resources and who to contact and those, because the regulations are very stringent. So, because we have another municipality that built a structure and built a facility, but only a percentage of it can be used because they can't get it staffed because they're trying to. And so that's an issue too. And I know going forward, it's nice to hear with a private person, they seem to be a private group, they seem to be more successful.
And I will say, I know in Glencoe specifically, that group that they got, it wasn't their first run at a daycare. They
Right.
have multiple locations. So when you have a bigger staff pool and you can start sending people each way, you can kind of cover needed shifts. So
But what we're saying is we agree with you. We don't disagree. Counselor Daigle.
Do we not look at a partnership with the school board? We have a high school that's completely underused. We're talking, there's been talk about closing Park Hill High School for so many years because the numbers have got down so low. There has to be classrooms and spaces in that school that are available. They also have the land around them to put in the secured play areas. To me, it's a great place to grow till they need their space for school.
Yeah.
Then we have land behind it that we could in turn develop at that time. But first, we got to make sure it's a project go. And this could tell us by partnering with the school board. We'll know if it's a viable future. And you know what, even the school board might move in and say, yeah, we're gonna reduce.
Well, and that was one of the things I was thinking when I mentioned earlier about, what can we share with the schools and stuff. And yeah, because it has worked in other places. So that's why I said we should be next, right? Okay, any other questions on this? Councilor Nelson.
Yes, item number 52, Mayor Rob, I believe that you'll perhaps recall that a number of years ago, it was something that council was seriously considering in some format was to engage more youth in some manner or form. And so I really believe in this recommendation. I think it's something we should look at quickly and to pursue it aggressively. I think engaging our youth is important.
I agree, and especially in the recreation area, right, to get their feedback. Councilor Irwin.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. Through you, 46, 48, and 49 all speak to working with community partners, special events, programs and development, planning for community-led events and so forth. Are we looking at some additional resourcing on our part as a municipality to help community groups with these types of activities?
I guess that would be for council's consideration, whether they want to get more involved in these community events financially, if they want more resources committed towards them. And then from there, yeah, it would really be up to council.
Follow up.
Thank you, your worship. I know we this addressed later on around communication, but it seems to me that one of the areas that community groups could use a lot of help with is the whole communication strategy they have and letting people know what's going on, getting the word out, coordinating, marketing, etc. Not so much delivering the actual activities, but helping to build awareness and marketing opportunities.
And I believe Natalie's doing some work in trying to increase the promotion of those events through different means of transport. So yeah, we see that already, and we are trying to work with the community groups, get the word out, make sure that people aren't trying to plan events on the same weekend type of thing and go against each other, and try more of a wholesome, holistic approach to it.
And getting the word out, the one thing we talked about, we did approve in the budget a sign similar to this in Elsa Craig at the Old Town Hall, correct? Can I ask where are we at with that? Still,
Yes, it was approved for a sign at Elsa Craig, the Old Town Hall. Natalie is working on, Natalie and Brandon are both working together to implement that project.
okay. Yes. Other follow-up on this page? No? Okay.
So now we will go through recommendations 53 to 60.
Questions on this, comments on this one? Councilor Daigle?
I think the thrust behind this meeting was brought on by points 54, 55. The groups coming to us to get engaged. The people who are doing our plan said they talked to our groups, but I don't think they followed it up with our groups 100% to get all the input that was required. This is what we really have to work on, is the engagement part, to make sure everybody has had a good say. And I'm just saying that I think that's some of the more important parts of this is the community engagement. Make sure we're supplying and working towards what the people need in their facilities.
Yeah, agreed. And that's what, one of the reasons this is streamed, that this meeting is streamed, so that if it creates more conversation and more comments coming through. Brandon, we want to get all the information we can through to them. Counselor Irwin.
I could just build on Councillor Daigle's comment. And I know we do this informally and do a good job at it, but formally, instead of going to our committee once every 10 years, is there a way that we can review what we're doing on an annual basis to make sure we're on track with where the community is evolving and changing?
Yeah, and we talked about doing like an open public meeting, just maybe with an agenda, a bit of an agenda or a guideline to it, and just a more of an open forum. That has not been implemented, but that was the talk at the end of the last term. Right.
Do you think that would be a program though that would be better addressed, say at the recreation committee level? Where annually they hold one of their meetings where any groups can come forward and discuss. And those things then get brought by the recreation committee forward.
Yeah, I like that. Ashley.
Just to let public know, they are welcome to attend those meetings, and they are, I guess they are put on our calendar to let public know when they are happening. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to the chair or the staff member on the committee, or even myself.
And you were talking about expanding on that though, correct? Like inviting them to the meetings. And yeah,
Yes.
okay. Other comments, questions on this page? Councillor Nerder.
Not on this page, but they do, Monteith Brown does on the next page, we'll skip ahead to 67. It does say that we should do a review around 2027 and 2028 of this plan. So they do make that suggestion.
But that's still a 4-year gap. I think that's what you were trying to say. How do we bridge the gap?
I'm saying that annually we could have that. Sort of a report card.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Irwin, did you have something on the other page on 104?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Nerd's pretty slick. Sorry. I'm looking at 59, your worship.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the term minimizing risk and other necessary details. What can we do to help community groups in terms of understanding the growing liability issues, insurance issues, safety issues, not necessarily blanket coverage, but how can we help them navigate what's becoming a very complex environment to deliver programs, services, and special events?
Brandon.
Yeah, so I think the best thing we can do is provide ourselves as a liaison resource. I know with events such as gala days, usually they're telling me what they're planning on doing. Something as simple as they were planning on doing a ball tournament, like just identifying the risks that come with that when you've got events beside it. Just making sure that they're aware of risks as well, and you know, different ways to mitigate that through whether it be conversations with Darcy, our insurance broker, and just having that resource for them when they do these events. I think that that's something that's fairly easily done and is already done with a lot of these groups, making sure that any loose ends are tied off in terms of insurance for the event. Should anything happen, nobody's personally liable for it. Yeah, those type of.
You have a follow-up?
I do know that issues like liability insurance have increased significantly post-COVID. And what people could have done 5 years ago now requires more care and attention. So we need to think about what we can do. Some communities, for example, have a deal with an insurance broker where a group can buy a one-day insurance package and they negotiate with the broker. The municipality doesn't pay for it, but they set it up. Go to this broker, they'll sell you insurance for a day, it's X amount. All the troubles, the concerns are gone, and it becomes a pre-negotiated package as an example of what we could potentially do.
No, I don't hate that idea. It's
Yeah, and we do, but our insurance does offer that. It's just a matter of we don't necessarily send people to it. Right. At this time, we don't.
And
We just got through clarifying some insurance issues with our groups to make sure who's covered, who isn't, all those type of things. And that's maybe something that's part of the annual report. When we have the insurance come to us, we should be checking, clarifying that when they do that.
And just further to that, we have talked about doing a special event package so that if you are coming to do gala days or you're doing a 1 day, I don't know, like let's say you're doing a Tough Mudder or something like that, and you want to use our facilities and broadcast it to our municipality, we're thinking about just a package that says, we require 5 million general liability. Here's a couple places you can get that. If you're doing this, you need to have this, basically full package so that they can basically check off the boxes and make sure that at the end of the event, we've got all these boxes checked, so we're good.
So help navigate the system, help navigate. Great idea. Other questions on that page? We're heading to the
We
last.
are on 104 current.
Yeah, we're on 104. So any other on 104? If not, let's go to 105, and then we will have time for general questions on it away from just these papers. Okay.
So yeah, we'll do 105, 61 through 67.
Okay, questions to that? Councillor Knellison.
I think more of a comment, Mayor Robert. That's
Yep.
just to expand the council, Meredith and Councillor Irwin's that discussion on the progress reports, and evaluating the recommendations here or the master plan itself. And when I'm reading at item number 66, would the Recreation Advisory Committee report to council on an annual basis? Would they be responsible for reviewing the master plan and reporting back to council on the progress that was made? It would seem to make some sense, would it not?
I think that would be the better, I mean, to bring it here to council direct it won't work. Agree.
Yeah,
Brandon, what do
it
you-
is a difficult one to undertake. Getting satisfaction levels would require us going to more of a survey-based approach after a rental. Our program may be able to do it, but when your rental is complete, it auto emails out a survey to say, how was your experience? But yeah, if we could get that data and collect it all and then present it in a report to the Recreation Advisory Committee, then it comes through that way, I think that would be most appropriate.
Councillor Irwin.
I would volunteer some assistance through the university to develop a set of key performance indicators for consideration that could be easily used for this purpose as a project. And then take it to the recreation committee and see how they feel about it.
Yeah, let's take, we have those opportunities. All right, sounds good. Any other questions on this page? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, on 62, we talked about review of the community development fund. We did discuss, I think at budget time, reviewing these funds because it's been some time since they were established. If my memory serves me correct, at some point, just because it has been a few years since they've been established, especially the fund relating to the windmills. I think that we're midway through a 20-year agreement on that fund, if I'm correct. And are they up to date with current need? Are the dollar amounts correct? Current allocations? Should we be shifting? I think there was a few questions, and we did discuss the potential of redoing that as a package at some point, if I remember. Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead, Estelle.
Yes, we did discuss that. You're right, Councillor Irwin. When we brought the report to council for the allocation of the funds for 2023. And there is an allocation. There are, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, there's 5 different components of the community development fund policy. I believe, or there could be 6, 3 of which have not been utilized in quite a while. So I would definitely agree that a review of the community development fund policy and allocation process would be granted, would be doable.
So that needs to be done fairly soon because the grants go out for November, correct?
The applications need to
Deadlines
come
in
in.
November.
Correct.
So that should be done. Council Daigle.
Would it be possible to have that for our August 19th meeting? The policy brought forward for us to look at.
I think you mean August 16th. We can look, well, the reason I know is because I'm on vacation that day. So, but we can definitely have a look and in conjunction with the CAO, we can bring it to policy committee if that is council's wish.
But maybe a copy of it could go to all of council to have a look at, just email it to council, that policy
Of the current
that's
policy.
existing now. So see what, so we can get some feedback from everyone.
We
What's,
can
what's that?
certainly do that.
I think that would-
That's August 16th, right? Because I think the manager of recreation is busy on the 19th.
Okay. Okay, so is there any other questions on these pages? If not, we do still have some time, and I think more general questions to the whole master. And one we haven't even mentioned tonight that I see brought up by a lot of people is swimming pools. And because it is brought up a lot, and there are people who are for it, and there's people opposed to it. But what I was looking, I think it was like 65% of the people that responded thought we should have outdoor swimming pools. I don't think an indoor is even something to consider, just because of costs and upkeep on it. But I guess council, I'd like to hear feedback from council on that, because that is something that's been brought up by a lot of. Councilor Daigle.
I'm a firm believer that public swimming pools are only a drain on money. They do not offer good value for the people, for their tax dollars. The splash pad works much better. We don't supply the supervision, shall we say, like a lifeguard. The parents still are in charge of their children when they go to a splash pad. We don't have water quality problems because water is not being used and reused and reused. I just think for a small municipality to go anything over a splash pad is not a good idea for a small municipality.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Irwin.
I agree with Councilor Daigle. We just don't have the population for a swimming pool. And if you look at how it almost bankrupted the municipality of St. Mary's when they put one in a few years ago, I think we should avoid it at this time.
Councilor Nelson.
And I agree with both Councilor Daigle and Councilor. I'll go with someone, I think my views are a little different. I just don't see the return on the investment. I think it's such a short period of time that can be utilized, typically just 2 months of the year at the substantial cost. I don't think that that's good value for our limited financial resources.
Okay. And I wasn't promoting it. I thought we need to discuss it. It needs to be talked about here at the floor because of the amount of people that talked about it. Brandon.
I will just say another point to that is, I know Luke and Badolf struggled with it, is you need so many lifeguards on. You need so many that have their NLSC certification. You need so many Bronze Cross on that deck. If you do not have them, you do not operate your pool. You become dependent on staffing. And typically they're younger staff. You're looking at kids in college or fresh out of high school who have those credentials. And currently I struggle enough to fill my grass cutting roles, and I couldn't imagine having to fill a full pool staff. I know that's been an issue for multiple municipalities in the last couple of years. And then as well as just the overall operational cost of a pool is substantial.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with any of the comments made. I agree with them. Also, I think we could talk to our neighboring communities, as you said, to see what their challenges are. Strathroy Caradoc is a much larger population than what we have, and their struggles in staffing it and different things like that. So, but yeah, any other comments on that? But just on the whole plan in particular, I mean, we haven't discussed the whole thing. Councilor Irwin.
Well, I think it's a great step forward to have an annual review of elements of the plan, because I understand from some folks in our community, there's areas they would have liked some more input on. So by having an annual review, it really ensures it's a living, organic plan I know there was some people in the arts and cultural community who wanted to add some aspects to it. I know there's some people in the environmental and climate change area that wanted to add some aspects to it. So I think what we're saying today is this is our start, not our finish.
Right. Exactly.
And we're going to take an annual look at what we're doing. And if there's some elements that aren't there now, doesn't mean they may not be next.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about being a living document, though, this whole thing. I mean, everything that's written in there, we're not going to achieve. And some things that aren't in there, we are going to. But Councillor Nelson.
Mayor Rob. And again, just, I think what surprised me that was missing in here was like an ATV trail. I think they're a growing industry, and I know they're high risk, high liability. But again, it's something that a significant number of people really enjoy operating those ATVs and having fun with them. I think if it was a specific location, that'd be quite busy.
Okay. Councillor Daigle.
My thought on that is that if it was a viable thing, somebody would be doing it privately. It's the liability insurance. We can get blamed for so many things when you get motorized sports going. And again, we're a small municipality and our insurance rates are high enough now without trying to put a facility like that.
But they're mostly farm boys and they don't do anything silly.
Okay. We won't go there anymore. Hey, other comments, questions on the whole thing? Councillor Irwin.
And just one final general comment, Your Worship. And we did pay some attention in our report to community groups and volunteer groups and the role they play in maintaining our quality of life, our recreation and cultural facilities. I would love to see some more concrete ways that we can help support those groups in our community, because we couldn't have the community we have today without volunteer groups like all of rural Ontario.
Oh, yeah,
So, but what we can do for future conversation for council to continue to support and promote our volunteers, I think would be incredibly important for us.
yeah, we know we just supply the facilities. We don't do the events. That's all volunteer in our community. You're right. We have a great base for that. So the one thing I think that I want to see is it's easy to talk about the baseball diamonds and talk about that type of stuff. And it's, but I hope we can get going forward with these trails and those more leisure, because there are a lot of people and we know like in our communities, how many people just walk, whether they're walking their dogs or we're just going walking. And it's not just in town, it's in the rural, go down the rural roads as well. People walk. And I know there's quite a number of people that live outside of town that come into town to walk in the winter and that type of thing because of the sidewalks and everything. So I think that's a very important part. That's my own feeling too. So yes, like it's just a much safer way for people to walk. Anything else people want to bring forward here? Because one comment to me that I have is there's no timeline on finishing. It's not, we don't have to be at the finish line 1st of August. Correct, Brandon? I mean, we get the input until we feel that the input's all received.
Yeah, so the consultants actually reached out late last week just about this meeting, and then the amount of feedback they've gotten after the draft plan's been released has been substantial.
Yep.
So they are going to be trying to implement a lot of what they've heard as well as this meeting. So they wanted to make sure that council was aware that you're not going to see this final draft come back tomorrow. It's going to take some time to take that feedback and properly implement it into the plan. So we could be September, could be early October before the final's actually ready to come before council now. Yeah, they wanted everyone to be aware that now that they've collected so much, which is funny because during the open house, when they were looking for community feedback, we got hardly anything, but yeah,
now,
since the draft's been out and people have been able to actually read recommendations, it's been quite helpful for them. So
a basis to start on, right? To
Correct.
talk on. So it's, but I hope they don't put anything of picking any facilities and picking and choosing through facilities, as you mentioned, Adrian, about closing or that type of thing, because it's such a picking it out of the sky kind of idea. So, yeah. Anything else? If there's nothing else, I'd move for adjournment at this time and we reconvene at 6 o'clock. Moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.